Hello. Hello, this is Crystal of Culinary Confidant, and welcome to the Ask a Chef uh, live Facebook series that we started. This is the second one, and we are going to talk about spices today. Um, for those of you that are not familiar with Culinary Confidant, I started Culinary Confidant in an effort to help people learn how to cook healthy food that tastes good and have fun while doing it. We do cooking parties, in-home coaching, um, all kinds of different things. And Prairie Food Co-op is a community-owned grocery store that is hoping to open in the very near future in Lombard, Illinois, and they will provide as much local, sustainable food and products as possible. And Jason, can you please get the cat? Because he's scratching at the door. Uh, okay, so there is a lot to spices, and so I have a couple of notes, and I have just checking my messages. Okay, so I have so many spices that I thought it would be easier to take them all out and walk you through virtually, not virtually, but we're not actually going to get up and walk through my spice cabinet because that'd be awkward and hard to do with a camera. So first off, I wanted to, what's the word? Differentiate between spices and herbs. So spices are typically the seed or the fruit, the root, or the bark of a plant. Think of like cinnamon, that's a bark, ginger is a root. And usually they're either finely ground. Sometimes if you're using a root, it can be fresh. But herbs would be, you think more of like leafy green things or the flower of the plant. And those can be either fresh or dried. And usually if you're using fresh, you're going to use more than if you use dried because the dried will have a more concentrated flavor. And yes, so you'll want to adjust that because if you use the same amount in a recipe, you will not get the same result. And yes, so the purpose also, if you're wondering why you should cook with spices, there's a lot of reasons to cook with spices. One, it gives your food more flavor. It also gives it an aroma, so a smell when you're cooking. That's one of your senses, so things actually will taste better when you can smell it, if it's got a good smell. And then also to enhance the flavor of your food. So big one with that would be salt. Salt is something that is the purpose of salt is to enhance the flavor of food. Your food should never taste salty when you're cooking. If it's tasting salty, then you have too much salt. And that's really hard to recover from. I like to describe salting food when I'm teaching as kind of a roller coaster. So you start with your dish and yeah, salt is the best. You add your salt slowly. And also, I use kosher salt because I find that it gives more control over using a table salt. If it's very finely ground, you're more likely to oversalt your food. So I always use kosher salt unless it's salt that's on the table, then you can use the table salt, not the stuff in the little shaker. So yes, so back to the roller coaster. So you add a little bit of salt and also you want to salt at the end of cooking because your food will typically cook out liquid, it will evaporate, and then your dish is more likely to get too salty. Soup would be, or chili, something that simmers for a long time would be a good example. If you salt it in the beginning, And you can add a little bit of salt in the beginning. That's good because you want to build layers of flavor when you're cooking. But if you do the salting in the beginning and then you let it cook for an hour or 2 hours and you come back, it's going to taste really salty because a lot of your liquid has evaporated. So what you want to do is the last thing before you're serving is check your salt and taste, add a little bit more, taste it again, add a little bit more, taste it again. Obviously stop when you want to stop, but slowly adding salt will give you more control. So back to like my roller coaster analogy, you add it until it builds the flavor. And then you'll get to this peak, which for me, that peak is, man, that's good. I want to eat another bite. If I feel that way, I know that I'm done with the salt, because if you add more salt, then you go off the cliff and there's no coming back from that. The only way you can really fix salt is to add more of other things. So you can reduce it back down. You can add more liquid. But if you're cooking something like vegetables or a piece of meat, you're not going to drown it in a bunch of liquid, because then then you could have soup, I guess. That would be how I would fix that. So back to the point of why we use spices and herbs. So enhancing the flavor is one, and then also it can enhance or change the color. So something like turmeric will give your food a yellowy orange color. Something like paprika will give it a reddish color. So if you were to put paprika in like roasted potatoes, then it would give it more of a goldeny, vibrant color and look delicious for your Instagram pictures if you're doing that. So yeah, those are all the reasons why we use spices. And I'll talk a little more about that later, but also medicinal purposes. Spices go way back, being used to treat different things. And so we'll talk a bit about that later on. But so the basics, as far as people ask me, the most common question would be, what spices should I keep on hand all the time? So for me to narrow that down, is a little tricky because you can't see it, but I have a large grouping on this table. And I would say for me, definitely garlic and onion. No, what am I doing? I'm trying to get rid of notifications. Stay on this page, yes. I want to see your comments, guys. Okay. And also feel free to ask questions. I don't remember if I said that, but if you have a specific question about a spice that you'd like to use, something you want to make and you're not sure how to season it, ask away and I will do my best to answer. I am not the all-knowing spice person, but I do know a lot about spices, and I have a lot of spices here. So, okay, so definitely garlic. I have a large garlic. You can do granulated garlic, you can do powdered garlic, but garlic goes with everything. And in my house, it was, you can never have too much garlic. So growing up, that is, it's still that way actually. And then, so garlic, onion, you can, usually everybody has onion powder. I think I have a few of them. Garlic and onion go with everything. Same for salt and pepper. Now there's different kinds of pepper. You can do, traditionally, black pepper is used for almost anything. If you're going to make something and you don't want the little black pepper specks on your food, you can use white pepper. White pepper is a little bit stronger, and it's kind of funky smelling. That's the other thing, is smell your spices. Smell them, taste them, get to know them. Because if you're putting it in your food, you need to know what it tastes like. When I was in culinary school, we had an extra credit assignment where we had to get blindfolded and then smell the spices and identify them. And I got the most right, which was really exciting for me. But I was amazed at how many people got so many basic spices wrong because they don't regularly just, smell it, put it in. It's just people are throwing stuff in. Don't cook like that, because you don't know what's going in. how are you going to know what it's going to taste like and how it's going to change? So it's so important to taste your food very often. That way, anytime you add something, you can tell how it changes the flavor. So there's white pepper, there's all different kinds of peppercorns. There's pink peppercorns, and they all taste a little bit different. But fresh ground is great. I am spilling my water. Isn't this fun to be live? Let's just move this out of the. So much for that mug, Jerry. This is my lovely PFC mug that I had to place awkwardly so that it wouldn't have help coming. Ah! Okay, so let's improvise a little bit. Let me answer a question. Oh, luckily I have a cleanup crew. Thank you so much for my notes I wrote. Okay, so granulated garlic, is it more pungent? Yeah, I guess so. I honestly, I use only granulated garlic, so or fresh. Yeah, that's not gonna work anymore. Or fresh. So I haven't really compared them side by side very recently. I need a shorter mug next time, Jerry. Don't worry about those notes. Good thing I know what I'm talking about. Okay. Well, give me this one. Give me that one. That's fine. So, well, I had a nice cool handout I was going to show you guys. I'll just link it. It's an infographic. But it talks about what you can use each type of spice for. It'll be fun. I'll show you what it looks like now. So you can't really tell. So I'll show you. I'll put the link in the comments below. I needed to fill the mug so that I had something to drink because I'm talking a lot, Jerry. So, okay, another question. I'm trying to use more turmeric in my cooking. Any suggestions on what kinds of recipes to use it in? So I have started using a lot more turmeric as well. I have a large turmeric from Costco. I will say when you do cook with turmeric, be careful what you are using because it will stain. It'll stain anything plastic, or if you have like a wooden spoon, it might turn it a little yellowy. So that's one thing to be aware of. I've put it in the blender a few times or the food processor, and it'll give it a little bit of yellow color to it, but not a big deal. It's got it's very fragrant. I wish you could smell. But you can use, one of the things I like to do with turmeric is use it in things like a curry, not necessarily a specific curry, but if you add other spices with it and coconut milk and make a sauce, you can put veggies in it, you can put over rice. I like to do a chickpea and broccoli mixture that I serve it over rice, and it's got turmeric, it's got garlic, onions, cumin is good, coriander. Well, my spices are being cleaned off, so I can't show you. But yeah, if that answers your question. You can use turmeric in so many things. I'll link the infographic that I was going to show you, and now it looks sad. So, okay. So back to what you should regularly have on hand. So we've got salt, we've got pepper, and as another type of pepper would be like whole peppers. So chili pepper flakes. You can do like the whole flakes, or you can do the ground like cayenne. So if you use cayenne pepper, you're gonna use a lot less because it's like I was talking about with the salt. If it's got a really fine ground, it's going to be more intense flavors. So you would get more heat. And one tip that I like to do is the get centered the I have two small children, and they like some things that are a little spicy, but I really like spicy food a lot. But I don't cook spicy food because I want them to eat it, and so I would use the red chili flakes at the end. So put those on the table, and then somebody that likes really spicy food can adjust the level of heat to their liking. So I don't do the cayenne when I'm cooking, and then I use the red chili flakes on anything really. Avocado toast, a Buddha bowl, add it to your stir fry, you can add it to anything. So, okay, so let me see. I have a couple questions. Okay, so what would you suggest for seasoning for a low salt diet? Yes, so I know I talked a lot about salt, and that's something we definitely do a lot in the culinary world. You don't have to use a lot of salt to get a lot of flavor. I would suggest actually there is a spice mix that you can make. I don't know the whole recipe off the top of my head, but I use it a lot. Using nutritional yeast, turmeric, cumin, I want to say. I can post a link to that as well. That's actually a recipe from a cookbook called How Not to Die, one of my favorites. And it's got a lot of healthy recipes in there. And they actually don't use any salt in those. I add a little salt to them sometimes, but they're great. So you can make delicious food without salt. So I will post a link to that seasoning for you, Mary, and then I will also post a link to this infographic for some more ideas with like other specific spices. So, okay, good question. Which spices benefit from heating, roasting before adding to other ingredients? Which ones should you definitely not toast first? So that is something I was actually going to touch on, and before my notes were flooded. So it's always an easy way to check. I know a lot of people get spices like you get a spice rack when you get married, and then you have that same spice rack for 20 years. Are those spices still good? It depends on who you ask. Yes, we haven't had it for 20 years, but so it's going to show. A good way to tell whether or not your spices are still good, first, smell it. If you don't smell anything, you can try crumbling them between your fingers to see if that releases some scent, or sometimes there are oils that if you toast them on like in a pan at a low heat, move it around a whole bunch. Like if you had like cardamom pods or fennel seeds, things that are a little bigger, they're not going to burn. You wouldn't want to do that with tiny little ground spices because they're more likely to burn. So another thing you can do is crush it if you have like a mortar and pestle, or anything really that where you can crush. You can use the bottom of a glass or a bowl or something, and kind of just push down and twist, and that should release some of the aroma of the herb. And if it's not, then it's probably not going to give you much flavor. So if that answers your question, like I made thank you. We're going to move back over here now. I made a curry powder with some herbs not herbs, we just talked about that, spices that I got from a friend who went to India. It was one of my favorite gifts ever. Actually, I have it over here in my lovely collection. it was something really fun she brought back for me. It's got all these different things. I used a bunch of these, but in here you'll see, thank you. Like, so these are seeds. These are fennel. This is something that you would need to crush, you roast. You can, good tip is get a little coffee grinder and just have it be your spice grinder if you want to go that route and make your own blends. But so what I did when I made the curry powder was there was a recipe in here, and I put together a bunch of these. There was chili, really hot chilies, actually, if I remember correctly. But put those all in a pan, toasted them, then ground them in a spice grinder, and it gives it, it releases the oils in the spices. So, yeah, I don't know if that answers that question. Kind of went off on a tangent there. So, yes, definitely don't toast things that are super finely ground. If you do, it's going to be for a very short amount of time. Otherwise, it's going to burn. They're going to taste bitter when they're burnt, and it's not going to be something that you're necessarily going to want to eat and enjoy. So for example, I commonly will cook chickpeas like in a pan. You can do some salt, oil, toast them, and then add the spices at the end, and then serve. Because if you toast them with the spices on there, the spices are going to burn, and then your chickpeas are going to taste burnt. That's just an example for that. Okay, another question. Which dried herbs are best for substituting for fresh, and which would you not compromise on and only use fresh? So that is a good one. I really think that depends on what you're making. You are going to get a more vibrant flavor when you use fresh, especially if you're making something fresh like a bruschetta, and you want to use basil, or if you're making something that simmers or cooks for a really long time, you are then, like if you use dried spices in that instance, you can rehydrate it. The flavor is going to come out. So things that cook longer, you have more flexibility with using dried spices. And then things that have a shorter cooking time or that are fresh, like a salad or a salad dressing, you'd want to use fresh, but it depends, and it's a preference thing too, I think. If you don't have fresh, definitely I would do dried instead of not making it, and try it and see what your preference is. Like fresh basil for me has a different flavor than dried basil. It's got more of a like peppery kind of bite to it. It's more delicious, in my opinion. If you can use fresh basil, I would use fresh basil. But if you're putting it in something where you have, basil and a whole bunch of other herbs, just go with all the herbs and don't worry about using fresh for everything, because fresh also gets really expensive. So I don't know if hopefully that answers that question. Oh, this is a good question. Can you talk a little bit about whether or not you'd say there's a big difference between pre-mixed spice package of something like taco seasoning and mixing your own from spices? That was on my notes to talk about before they were lost, doused. Luckily that was water. Yes, so I don't buy taco seasoning because I like to just use my own seasoning. Like I like to be able to control the salt in that. But there are good mixes out there. I would look for, really there's a lot of, I can show you some of the ones that I like. Get some of these out of the way. So for taco seasoning, like for me, cumin smells like tacos. Like I have to have a whole bunch of cumin and anything I'm making that I want to give me that taco feeling. That sounds weird, but and oregano I would do in taco seasoning, and And chili powder, depending on if you want it to be spicy or not, would depend on what kind of chilies. Ancho chili powder is poblanos that are roasted, I believe, and then dried and pulverized into a powder. And then cayenne would be your spiciest. Also a note on chili powder, since we have experience with this at PFC for an event we did. Make and tasting your food too. This also goes back to tasting your food. So I did not taste the chili powder when we were making chili. That was my fault. I should have done that. I should have noticed that this chili powder was orange and not red. So if you are familiar with chili powder, where is my chili powder? Somewhere. Chili powder has a reddish color to it, but it is a mixture of things. So this chili powder has chili pepper spices. Yeah, great, thanks. So spices, it's gonna have like garlic, spices. It's a secret, We're not gonna steal your recipe. What did I write down? So for if you want to make your own chili powder, yeah, cumin, garlic, oregano, or if you want to be crazy, you can just use straight chili powder, which if you're buying chili powder from another country and it looks orange, that's because it's not this chili powder. It is cayenne pepper. So we added like, I don't know, 6 tablespoons of this. By we, I mean I take full responsibility for that. I don't know where my cayenne pepper is, but cayenne pepper is orange and this is red. So that should be my first takeaway. Yeah, so I tasted that chili and my mouth wanted to explode because it was very hot. But we fixed it. We added a lot of lime juice and some vinegar, tamed it a little bit, and people enjoyed it, actually. It was then the spicy black bean chili that was not supposed to be spicy at all in the first place. I don't know where my cayenne pepper went. I don't know. Oh, it's right in front of my face. Okay, so it's almost gone. You can tell I like spicy things, if you can see that. So red and orange. Oh, wish I had that water, Jerry. Excuse me. Okay, so back to your question. I have mixes, like I have a 5-spice powder that's got a lot of good stuff in it. I have Penzi spices is great. And when Prairie Food Co-op opens, it'll be great because you can buy spices in bulk and you won't have to have all these tiny little jars, which actually you, I still store things in jars, but they're reusable jars. Like I use ball jars or mason jars for a lot of things. We'll talk about that in a minute. And then I have reusable ones that I don't have up here. They're somewhere. Oh, here's one. So I have these, which you can actually use. Oh, thank you for that delivery. There's a lid on it this time. Ah, perfect. Delicious. I was trying to put it in the right spot last time. That didn't go well. So I don't want to spell it again. I'm going to put it over here. Okay. So this is a really cool container that it's a reusable spice thing. You could put your own label on there if you wanted. I use it to hold kind of cool things here. I got star anise. That's kind of like a licoricey flavor. Some whole rosemary. I don't know why I have that in the bag. And then nutmeg, nutmeg is something that is great if you buy and you use fresh compared to the ground. I think it's got a better flavor. So this is what it looks like on the inside. And it's a little ball. That's kind of cool. And actually the shell of the nutmeg is the spice called mace. I don't really use that for much. But you would need a little, like a microplane, or I think some like cheese graters have a very fine section on it where you can just get a little bit of fresh stuff. And fresh nutmeg, in my opinion, is definitely better than the ground, especially if you're doing like a sauce. Okay, so the other Trader Joe's has some great mixes. Chili lime, avocado toast. I see that question. Chili lime on avocado toast. Where's another one? I know this is cheating, totally cheating, but I have so many spices, and you know what? I think it's okay to use pre-mixed stuff sometimes. But again, I would check the content of it and if it's got a ton of salt, because if you're using a pre-mixed spice, you can't adjust the salt if you're just dumping in the spice that's got everything in it. So what I like is to find the ones. Penzeys Spices has great mixtures, and some of them have salt and some of them don't. I have, so like this one, they make a creamy peppercorn dressing base. You just add your liquid or whatever you want to make your ranch with. You could use mayo, you could use sour cream, you could use something vegan, which is probably what I would do, but I don't know what right now. Okay, so then everything with the bagel. I know people love this one. I also love this one. These are my two favorites from Trader Joe's. They had a mushroom mixture. I forgot what it's called. I just used the rest of that the other day. That was great because it had like dried ground mushrooms in it. That's a great mixture to use as well. Chili flakes, also great for avocado toast. Curry powder is another. I really like this. And we can see that. This is a co-op as well. They've got, I think curry powder is a great one because it's a time saver. You don't have to measure out a whole bunch of different spices when you're, in a hurry. And what's this? 21 Seasoning Salute. I got that from Trader Joe's. I've used that some. It's okay. I think it's probably supposed to go on chicken. I don't really eat chicken though. So a lot of these potatoes. Throw something on a potato, roast it, and see if you like it. That's the easiest way to determine whether or not, it's something you want to keep using. Here's another Penzeys one. English prime rib rub. I dropped that one clearly. Again, I've had these a really long time. We don't eat prime rib anymore. But that's great if you do, It's fine. So, okay, then another spice mixture actually that I just started doing the other day is paprika. You can use smoked or you can use sweet. Difference, one is smoky, one is not. And I would say if you want to add a smoke flavor to your food, use smoked paprika. Don't use like liquid smoke or something like that. I'm just not a huge fan of that. And then we have sweet paprika. So this is the paprika you want to use if you don't want smoky flavor. If you do, then use smoked paprika. But a word of caution is the smoked paprika will definitely kind of overpower the other things that you've got going on. So you don't need a lot. And if you don't like smokiness, go with the other paprika. But so yes, anyway, this is for popcorn. Chilies, I use paprika, some cayenne pepper, wherever that went, salt, olive oil, so good. And then if you want more heat, more cayenne. That's another nice thing about doing your own spices as opposed to doing a mixture. You can control how much of each thing you are tasting. And so we talked about tasting your food. So if you're making something and you add in your cumin, taste it. Then you add in another spice, taste it. Add in another spice, taste it. That way you know what each of them tastes like when you so that you can adjust the flavor of your food. Also, a little tip, a little acid will go a long way. So a little splash of vinegar will really like brighten the flavors in your dish. So I know we are over our 30 minutes. It's just, I have so much to talk about with spices. Um, I want to talk a little bit about the difference between sweet and savory spices. If you are a baker, you're probably familiar with what I'm talking about. Well, bay leaves, this would be something that you would simmer like in a stew or something and then remove it. Do not eat it. But as far as sweet spices, so we've got cinnamon, we've got cloves. So I stack them up if you can see them. Oh, I should have done this before. Oh, poppy seed. You could use poppy seed as a thickener as well as like in your muffins. Fun fact. And allspice is somewhere here. Anyway, I've got cinnamon, cloves, allspice. Crystallized ginger is a fun one. I used to use that in my turkey for Thanksgiving, but I don't make turkey anymore. So, but yeah, a lot of these are good. Oh, nutmeg. They're good in baking or sweets or like oatmeal. And also you can use them in sweeter things, like if you were going to season like a butternut squash and you want to roast that, or if you want to do something with coconut milk. I love coconut milk. Yeah, so, okay, let's do, I don't like to. Okay, so seeds, this is going to fall. We've got sesame seeds. Oh, I talked about poppy seeds. Where'd those go? And poppy seeds. Oh, sesame seeds come in different colors. Those are great. You can add these into a stir fry if you're making something. Also, I would use sesame oil with your stir fry because then you'll have more sesame flavor. And then if you were going to make a stir fry, I would definitely use ginger, garlic, and red pepper flakes for the heat. Add them at the end if you have people that don't like spicy. I've got hemp. These are not spices. They're technically hearts, but like some people call them hemp seeds. These are great to add to salads, nutritious. And then flax. I have golden flax seeds today, but they come in different colors. You want to grind these up. Again, you can use that spice grinder. You can buy it pre-ground. Usually I do. We just happen to have these on hand as well because, stock up, right? And yeah, so seeds as well as nuts have a lot of beneficial properties. I'm all about trying to make the healthiest thing you can that actually tastes good. So that is a huge thing for me. Does anyone have any other questions? I forgot my pumpkin seeds over here, also called pepitas. Those are also great. Toast those, throw them in a salad. You can add seeds to just about anything, or nuts, gives it a little crunch, some texture. I feel like there's something that I'm forgetting to talk about. Let me check my soggy wet notes over here. Yeah, we talked about those things. Oh, so a tip that I was going to tell you would be to think about foods that you eat and what is in those, or if there's a recipe that you like and you know that certain herbs or spices go well together, replicate that with another thing. So if there is something that you make in like same goes for toppings, like toppings on a pizza could be the same for a salad or the same for a sandwich. It works the same way for herbs and spices. So like different ethnic cuisines will use the same types of spices. in all of their dishes. And they do that because it goes well together. They've been doing it for a very long time and they are familiar with that. So if you have a couple ingredients and you're not sure what to do with it and you know you want to try cumin or something like that, do a quick Google and find a recipe. You don't have to follow the recipe. See what spices are in it and approximately like the ratios, like if it's got 2 parts cumin to 1 part garlic or something like that. Use that to get creative. And I'm not saying go find a recipe and buy all those ingredients, but use it for inspiration, because especially if it's a trusted source, that's the other thing, which that's a whole nother post that or video that I think maybe we'll do is about recipes. And yes. So, okay, quickly, I know we're going over our time, but the if I was going to recommend for like health purposes that you add in any type of spice or herb to eat more of, I'm not saying go crazy and eat, a crazy amount of it, but turmeric has been shown to be one of the most beneficial spices, proven over long periods of time. You can make a drink out of it, golden milk. It's been around for a long time. Also, try just adding a little bit into different things you're cooking. And again, start small with whatever it is, taste it, and see what you think. You can always add more, but you can't go back. So just add a little bit. And a little bit would be like 1/4 of a teaspoon or less. A teaspoon is a good amount. You don't want to dive in that deep. And then garlic, also very good for you. Ginger, also very good for you. And peppers, cayenne peppers, any kind of peppers, good for you as well. That's a whole nother topic. But yes, spices are good for you. Use them. They make your food taste good. And yeah, I don't know, this one's kind of dry. This is infographic with all the different herbs, not all of them, but a lot of them, and then different things that it pairs well with, so that you can kind of get creative on your own, because there's a million combinations and things that you can make. So I encourage you to get creative with stuff and give it a shot. If you don't like it, you'll never do it again. And you'll learn, I don't like this combination. This is what I did wrong. You have to make the stuff that you don't like in order to get to the stuff that you do like sometimes. So yeah. And again, if you want to do something safe, look at another recipe and kind of go off of that. But I think that we have covered everything, and I had fun doing this, minus the water that I dumped all over everything. That was not as fun. But thanks for everyone that tuned in, and I hope to be doing some more of these videos. If there's any topics that you would like me to chat about, feel free to send me a message or comment on this. If you have any other questions about any of this, send me a message. I'm always happy to answer food-related questions. I do follow a plant-based diet, but I'm happy to answer any sort of cooking questions. I do know how to cook things that are not plants as well. And thanks, Prairie Food Co-op, for helping me put this on and reach lots of people. I hope it was helpful, and yeah, I hope that you tune in again. So I hope everybody is staying as healthy as possible and safe. And thank you to all of our healthcare workers, because you guys are awesome. And yeah, so thanks again, and goodbye.